2 degrees is the target for limiting the global temperature increase, but if greenhouse gas emissions were halted now, temperatures would still rise by up to 1 degree Celsius. 6,000 years ago, temperatures were at this level, and America's Midwest was a desert. The world's food production centres will become barren again. In this future, mountains lose their glaciers and rivers vanish, the Indian subcontinent fighting for survival. A single degree temperature increase could eliminate fresh water from a third of the planet within 85 years. Warming at the poles happens faster than the global average. 40% of Arctic sea ice has disappeared in the last 30 years. While ice reflects heat, oceans absorb it, so as ice melts, the process becomes self-reinforcing. More ocean surface means more heat absorbed, which raises temperatures, making the ice less likely to reform. Mountainous regions are at greater risk of landslides as the permafrost which held them together for thousands of years melts away. Low-lying countries like the Maldives are submerged as sea levels rise, and countries already hit by hurricanes face ever greater storms. At a 2-degree rise, people begin to die in what are now considered normal summers. In 2003, with temperatures 2.3 degrees above average, 52,000 people died across Europe. Plant growth slows down, then stops. They don't absorb carbon dioxide as efficiently, instead emitting it. The extra carbon sees global warming spiral out of control. 125,000 years ago, when temperatures were 2 degrees higher, sea levels were up by 6 metres. Today, that extra water makes up our polar ice, which is melting. By the year 2100, sea levels could rise by a metre, displacing 10% of the world's population. In this 2-degree future, ecosystems across the globe collapse as species migrate and fall out of sync. A third of all life on Earth faces extinction. Scientists say we can still avoid a 2-degree rise if we limit our carbon emissions to no more than 2.9 trillion tonnes. We've already used 1.9 trillion tonnes, we have 1 trillion left to use between now and forever. At the current rate, we'll use it in just 21 years. After the collapse of the Amazon and the carbon cycle, stabilising global temperatures to avoid a 4-degree increase may no longer be possible. The global stream of migrants, which started with those seeking food and water, now includes millions fleeing coastal areas. Cities there will either vanish or become islands. In this temperature range, ice at both poles is certain to vanish, causing an eventual rise in sea levels of 50 metres. This will take hundreds, perhaps even thousands of years, but a sea level rise of even 1 metre every 20 years is far beyond our capacity to adapt. One place where adaptation is critical is China. While most countries' emissions have been largely stable since the start of this century, China's have gone through the roof. Today, the country produces 28% of the world's rice, 24% of the world's maize, and 18% of its wheat. But in this future, Chinese agriculture crashes. The country needs to feed more than 1 billion people on 2/3 of its current harvest. Meanwhile, by this point, up to 85% of the Amazon rainforest has disappeared. Summers will be longer, with soaring temperatures turning forests into firewood. Southern Britain could reach 45 degrees Celsius. Air conditioning is mandatory, which in turn puts more stress on energy infrastructure. There's a spike in emissions as output from coal and gas power stations increases, as hydroelectric sources literally dry up and renewables fail to take up the slack. But the most damaging event at this temperature is the irreversible thaw of permafrost. At least 500 billion tonnes of carbon trapped below ground could be released by 2100. While no one has put a figure on the exact implications for global warming, the signs are ominous. Above 4 degrees, we're looking at a vastly different planet. Ice has vanished from both poles, rainforests have turned to desert, and rising seas reach deep into continents. Populations move to the newly thawed regions in Canada and Siberia, but even here, summers may be too hot to grow crops anywhere but the coasts. There's nothing to buy, and producers have nothing to sell. migrants force their way into the few habitable places left on Earth. Racial conflicts and civil wars are the inevitable outcome. When temperatures were last at this level 55 million years ago, alligators lived in the Arctic, Spain was a desert, and mangroves grew in England. All of this followed a sudden burst in global warming. It may have been caused by methane hydrate, which forms under the sea and can escape with explosive force when oceans warm up. Methane is a greenhouse gas 20 times more potent than CO2. A huge eruption would make the chances of us avoiding a 5-degree rise extremely remote. To see what the world could look like at 6 degrees, we have to go back 251 million years. 95% of living species were wiped out. At sea, everything suffocated, and the only winners on land were fungi and the pig-like Lystrosaurus. Sea levels rose 20 metres, and the warmer water released pent-up methane from the seabed, with the gas shooting hundreds of metres into the atmosphere. Perhaps worse than its effect on global warming, methane is flammable. The smallest spark or lightning storm will ignite it, sending fireballs tearing across the sky. Scientists say such explosions, much greater than a nuclear bomb, could destroy life on Earth almost entirely. Hydrogen sulfide thrives in the stagnant oceans. It's devastating for marine life, and in the atmosphere it poisons trees, animals, and humans. Finally, along with massive amounts of sulfur dioxide produced in such a world, it cripples the ozone layer, exposing what life remains to fatal levels of UV radiation. The forests are burning, the rivers are drying up, continents carved up by toxic oceans, and corpses pile up in cities across the planet. The 6-degree world is a bleak one.